Hi, everyone. I am Connie Zawo-Schmucker. I'm Advocacy Director at Bicycle Garage Indy, and we're doing our Spotlight on Bicycling. This is about some groups that are encouraging diversity in bicycling. So we've got the Black Girls Do Bike Indy, the Bikes United in Indy, and Major Taylor Cycling Club representatives that are going to talk about some of their activities that are going on. So I'm going to have each one of them talk a little bit about their group, and then I may ask them some additional questions. And those of you who are attending, feel free to go ahead and chat or put any questions or comments you might have in chat, and we'll cover those as well. So for those of you who are regular attendees of the Spotlight on Bicycling, we've gone to monthly, so the next one will be in August. So check your emails and check our calendar for details on that as we get that set. And I think I will, I guess I'll start with Stephanie, if that's okay. We'll go ahead and start with you.
It's fine. I'm going to share with you guys one of the presentations that I worked on for another biking thing. I feel like this is becoming it's becoming a problem, Connie. Well, let's just see if I can pull it up. Sorry. I thought I had it pulled up, sorry.
No worries. So Stephanie and I and another person did a joint presentation at the Walk Bike Place conference that was here in Indianapolis in June. And I talked about Ride Spot and how to find great places to ride near home. And Stephanie talked about Black Girls Do Bike Indy, and Tom Hanley talked about the 913 Sports Explore Indy, and also all of their other programs that they get kids on bikes. So,
all righty, I have it.
You got it. All right.
Okay, so well, thank you. So this is what I did for the Walk Bike Place. Okay, so a quick thing. So Black Girls Do Bike was founded not by us, but a few people who were motivated to get more women biking, more Black women preferably. Can everybody see my screen? We should have the Black Girls Do Bike up there. Is it? Okay. So we started, and we just wanted to grow the community of women of color who biked. It was very simple. And then as it took off, we have lots of chapters around the country. And I'd like to say too, that the guys wanted to get in on it too. So I think that's how Lathaniel and the guys started doing the Bikes United Indy, because they were riding with us. So they were supporting us a lot. A lot of those guys are our husbands, boyfriends and significant others. But I think they saw the fun we had. So I'd like to say we're not only getting women of color to do it, but we're getting men of color to do it too. So I think that's great. A lot of you guys have met Shari. She's our shero. She and Sean Jones were like the first big motivators for this. Sean has moved to North Carolina, but Sherry's still with us, and she's our shero, our resident shero. And she started this chapter in 2014. Sherry likes to say that we're a pep rally on a bike. And Damon is laughing because we had a lot of people who were riding with us yesterday in the Major Taylor ride. And I was there for their first shaky little pedals around that bike. And then we were at the top of the hill saying, you can do it, you can do it, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And so some of them were doing more hills than they've ever done before, and probably not really happy with us, but they did it. And at the end, you know, they felt accomplished. So I think Sherry's right when she says we're a pep rally on a bike. And what we do, here's a list of all the things that we've done. We still continue to have organized rides. We've had big group rides. We're still continuing to have rides. We have a weekly ride in Crown Hill on Wednesdays. And then we just have ad hoc rides that come up for the weekends, and anytime there's really the ride, really, that's kind of it. We support the community these ways. You see all our bullet points here. But I think what I enjoy the most is hearing what people say. So, you know, when people come to me and say they've improved their A1C levels, I feel like that's great time to celebrate. So whether you're actually doing things like my daughter, who's actually preparing to continue to race, which I think is great, a lot of us are just having fun and getting better health. So what's not to love about biking, right? So that's it. Any questions? Nope.
I might have some questions for you later, but we'll go ahead and have Lathaniel go next.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm on.
Yep, you're on.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Lathaniel Harrell. And about the group. Here's how the group got started, actually. Maybe a year ago, year and a half ago, we had met up with some other riders that was on a group Wednesday ride, me and the guys that I was riding with. And from there, I had talked with another young lady. I said, hey, you know what? This is pretty cool. This is pretty fun. You know, all of us riding together like this. It would be so many of us. And I said, we should just start a group. What should we call the group? And nobody knew the name to call the group. And so I said, I'll come up with a name for the group. When I came up with the name, they were like, hey, we like the name of that group. Let's roll with it. So actually, we did this last year, but it really came into play this year. And the crazy thing about it, what's so funny, Damon, is this right here. I didn't know I was the leader of the group. I just said, hey, let's get together and let's ride. And they said, and they started saying, hey, you're the leader of the group. And so we ran with that. And the rides are primarily on Sundays at 3 o'clock. And we'll get together at one or two locations, whether it be Fall Creek at the Boy Scouts or at Robert Park in Broad Ripple. And we'll launch from either one of those places there. We're looking for some new places actually to launch from as well. But anyway, some things that I can tell you about the ride, those who attend our rides. Anybody can attend our rides at all skill levels. I'm still not skill levels, at all skill levels can attend our rides, whether you're an advanced rider, intermediate rider, or a beginner. And what you can expect is not to get dropped on the trail. We have a clause is that no man is left behind. So whether it's me or one of the other guys or even one of the young ladies, they'll make sure that no one is left behind on the trail, even if we got to stay back there with you until you make it through the rest of the ride, or if you need to turn back, somebody will make sure that you get back safely, and we'll continue on with our ride. And what you can expect from the ride is a very loquacious atmosphere. You can expect that from us. We're very talkative. We have a lot of fun on these rides while we're being safe in the same token. We ride primarily on bike trails, very little street, but on bike trails where we normally ride. And people can find out more about our rides at Bikes United Indy on our Facebook page. Our Facebook page has grown tremendously since we started. We have over 200 people on our page, and every single day somebody's wanting to join, or they're inboxing me about the group, about the rides, how the rides go, you know, and things of that nature. And then also, we are currently in the process of having some custom-made jerseys, which most of you all probably have seen on our page, and we should have those within the next month or so. So we have a lot of fun on our rides. And I'm going to tell you a story. I was being bad one day. Somebody had purchased a new bike. I call this a success story. Somebody had purchased a new bike and they posted the bike in the group. And the young lady said, hey, I just purchased a new bike. I didn't know who she was from Adam. And she says, I want to ride with someone. Well, I saw the post, Stephanie, but I ignored her. I ignored her for a reason. This is a funny story because it was just the guys riding that day. And I knew that she was not going to be able to keep up on the trail. And so somebody told her to inbox me that he'll take care of, because normally that's what we do. We take care of folks that come out. And so she inboxed me. So now I'm stuck and I have to, ride with her on the trail this day. Hilarious story. She gets on the trail, gets on the bike. Let me tell y'all, she rode the entire 20-mile ride. And I got to tell the truth, it's so funny. She even beat one of our guys on the trail. And so I think that's one of our funny success stories. We had a ball with her. We had so much fun with her. We laughed hard that particular day. And even to this day, me and some of the guys, we still talk about that day that she came and rode with us. And we actually were excited that she came and ride with us. We had a bunch of fun with her. So pretty much in a nutshell, we're just a fun, loving group. And we'd love to have you out to come and cycle with us. And lastly, let me say this. We have some things that will be coming up this year that we can do right now at the present. And a few of those things are we're going to plan some night rides, a couple of night rides. And we're also going to plan a dinner ride and also a picnic ride. So we'll be letting you know the dates of those rides if anybody want to join us and have fun and fellowship along with us. Thank you all. I am done.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much. I put in the chat, Black Girls Do Bike Indy. You can find them on Facebook, and then Bikes United in Indy. You can find them on Facebook. So I will turn it over to Damon next.
Good evening. I'm Damon Richards. I am the executive director of Bike Indianapolis. And from that job, I kind of got drawn into the Major Trailer Cycling Club. It actually was Sean Jones, who, as Stephanie already told you, has left us because of love. Sean Jones was one of my board members, and she was contacted by some folks from major trailer clubs across the country who wanted to put on the first ever national gathering of major trailer cycling clubs. And Sean said, hey, would you be interested in trying to get this in Indianapolis? I said, yes, absolutely. So we started the process of trying to bring it here. And Indianapolis has had a major trailer cycling club for a while, but it was an organization that called themselves the Marshalls, Marshall being Major Taylor's real first name, and they weren't really active. And so Sean gathered some folks and said, let's do something to make this happen here. And that got me introduced to Karen Smart, who has really been the driving force behind the Major Trailer Cycling Club of Central Indiana, I believe we're calling it. So we didn't want to prevent Evansville or Fort Wayne or whoever from wanting to have their own Major Trailer Club. So the club got started. We have successfully managed to get the first ever Major Trailer National Convention, it's being called, to be hosted here in Indianapolis next year in June. And we've started riding. And we're riding every other Sunday. Yesterday was one of our rides, so next Sunday won't be. Every other Sunday, we're now starting at 9 o'clock, try to beat a little bit of the heat. And very similar rides. We ride between 20 and 30 miles. I describe it as conversational pace. So there's plenty of time to get to know one another and no drop. So we make sure everybody stays together. In fact, yesterday with all those hills, it's a huge challenge for me because I plan the routes and I didn't have time to put together cue sheets or maps. So I was the only guy who knew where we were going. So I would sprint to the front to tell the leaders which way to turn. And I would drift to the back to make sure the people in the back weren't too far behind. Then I'd sprint back to the front. So I rode a 20-mile wind sprint yesterday, but it worked out to be great. We had a lot of fun. We did some big hills because everybody had been complaining that I was taking them on hills. And I explained to them, there are no hills in Indianapolis. You got to get out of here to find a hill. So we went down into Johnson County, found a few hills. And I don't think people will complain anymore about my hills. And you talked about, those inspiring riders. There is a woman who rides with our group who bought a bike on Facebook in the spring, started riding. She has lost a tremendous amount of weight from her cycling. And I think at every one of our rides that she comes to, she sets a new milestone for herself. I was with her the first time she went 25 miles, and she and I cried at the end. It's like, you did. And yesterday we rode some pretty significant hills and a lot of rollers, and she rode every foot of the ride, which many others cannot say they did. A lot of people walk some hills. Not that there's anything wrong walking a hill, but it was really inspiring to me that she rode the entire way. So, you know, that's what we're trying to do with the Major Trail Club. Is very similar to what Black Girls Do Bike and Bikes United are doing. Is we're trying to create an environment where people can come out, they can become friends. The bike riding can be the thing that bonds us all together, and we make sure that nobody gets left behind. And we also try to make sure that everybody gets a workout regardless of their level, which is why I was doing those sprints. If we get too many faster riders, I won't be able to do that. So we'll have to figure something else out. But we've already talked about, you know, starting to divide the group up into different speed categories if we need to do that. So it will always be open to anybody from very, very new beginners. And we have had riders come out who didn't think 20 miles was a distance they could handle. And so they'd ride part of the way. And like Lathaniel talked about, somebody would make sure they got back to the start. We move around. We started downtown on the circle because that's where the Major Taylor National event is going to start from. So we kind of previewed some of that route, some of those routes, because it's going to be a multiple distance ride. And now we started to move out. We've gone northwest, and now we've gone southwest. And Stephanie tells me we got to go southeast, but we may go northeast first because I'm more familiar with the roads up there. But we'll move around central Indiana, and we may venture even further out. I heard some people talking yesterday about the Hilly 100. We may try to get a group together for the Hilly 100. But the club is open to anybody. We have a Facebook page. It's not really active. We have an email list that's a lot more active, and that's how we keep people notified of what's going on. If you want to get on that, you can email me. My email address is damon@bikeindianapolis.org. And we'll get you on that list. We're starting to work on a web page right now. So there'll be more ways to find us, but right now the easiest way is to get on our email list. And I think that's all.
All right, so I put some of the names, and I put your email in the chat. So, and then when I upload this recording, I'll put that in the notes for the recording as well, so people will get that information. So the yeah, it's interesting. All three of you mentioned that, you know, no rider left behind. I've led, I don't know, 500 bike rides, maybe more in my life. And I always ride them or lead them the same way. Is basically the group. My husband and I lead what are called grand touring rides for STRAVA. And we have cue sheets and maps for that, but they're not marked, unlike a lot of the STRAVA rides. And so, and they're in other locations, like starting in Columbus and going out in country roads and things like that. So the idea is for people to stay together and ride as a group, because it's more fun that way, rather than, you know, if I wanted to ride by myself, I would start from home and ride by myself. You know, if I want to ride with a group, then I want to ride with a group, you know. And so when we lead our grand touring rides, we'll always stop at certain key intersections to make sure everybody makes the turn. And so everybody stops, you know.
I stop at the top of the hill.
Yeah, or at the top of the hill, you know, to make sure that everybody gets up the hill. And it's.
And we stop for ice cream, right?
Yeah. And
oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, we always have ice cream at the end, you know, so. But what, so those people, I always tell them, you know, if you want to go on your own, you know, and don't want to stop for people, you're on your own. But if you want to be led by the ride leaders who know where you're going, you know, then stay with us. So in Columbus, we often get, sometimes we've had as many as 75 people on the ride. And it's impossible in hills to keep 75 people together. They spread out. And so sometimes we'll get to the place where we stop for food, and there will come from 3 different directions. They have gone somewhere. They found their way back, but they've gone somewhere. You know, and so most of the time people, you know, it's a great area. They're having fun riding. They usually split into multiple groups at that point when you have that many people. So depending on, you know, so for suggestions, depending on if your group starts growing or you have different disparate speeds, you might want to start doing something with some kind of navigation for them. But it's always, in my opinion, always better for a group ride. If it's 15 to 20 people, is relatively easy to keep together. When you get more than that, you're going to have a lot more people that get split up. And
we do that with the major trailer rides, except for yesterday. Normally, we hand out cue sheets to everybody at the beginning, so everybody has the route. And like you, we don't mark it because we go to a different place every time. But we still try real hard to keep everybody together because, like Stephanie said, you know, when we climbed that great big hill yesterday, just on that hill that was, I don't know, maybe a half mile long, the group got completely spread out. But when the last person got to the top, everybody was waiting for her and clapped for her and cheered her on. And, you know, you don't get that if you break up into speed groups. And so we try real hard to keep everybody together, but we realize what you're saying is we'll eventually reach a point where we have to separate.
Yeah,
we offer a cue sheet, we give a map, and we're going to start giving out the GPS tracks for people who have devices that can load them. So there's more than just a couple people
and
that
you
know the
do
route.
you do ride GPS too, Damon, right?
Yeah, we use ride with GPS.
Ride GPS?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the other things to be aware of, if you do have a big hill, and everybody's waiting, all of those people have rested.
Right.
And the people at the end, they've struggled the hardest to get up that hill. So you need to make sure that they get a little bit of rest before you all take off. They're like, oh, they're here, you know, let's go. You need to kind of wait a little bit before you take off. So yeah, a long time ago, my husband and I led rides every Saturday morning for our church, and we would have all sorts of different people who would come, and there was a 20-mile ride and a 40-mile ride, and we had maps and cue sheets, but we didn't mark them, and we had like 12 different routes. And so we got to some place like 7 to 10 miles out, like a Hardee's or Dairy Queen or something like that. And so everybody got there, and then the people who were going on the short ride, they had to basically go back the same way they came. And we had cue sheets, and they should have been able to find it. And then the rest of them did the rest of the 40 miles. We usually had one other stop, so we'd have 2 stops within the 40 miles. My husband has internal GPS, so he never gets lost. He can be someplace once and be able to find his way back or find his way there again. And so he's like, oh, well, if somebody has done this 7 miles, they should be able to find their way back because they've been there. And I've had to tell him many times over the years, no, that's not how everybody's brain works. So it was always kind of tricky for the people who did the shorter ride, because we usually had 1 or 2 people, and they kind of had to make their way on their own. And the rest of us mostly did the longer ride. But so it's always good if you can find somebody if you have multiple lengths rides, to find somebody who's the leader of that length,
Right,
who's the
right.
longer length.
Yeah,
Um,
Connie, me and your husband got the same spirit, because I do that too. I got a mental GPS personally, my own self, because I like to be adventurous and go on rides alone and
Yeah.
just learn certain things, certain trails and stuff like that. So I do that same stuff.
Yeah, he has no
Yeah.
fear of getting lost, no matter
Me
where
either.
we're at, because he can
I'm the
find
same way.
Me either.
People who ride with me will often hear me say, "I'm never lost because I'm always right here."
Yeah, yeah.
And when I lead rides, if I hand out a cue sheet, I usually tell them, "This is the nominal ride. We probably aren't going to follow this," because I'll get out and say, "Ooh, let's go down this street and see what's over here." So
Yep.
there is some sense of adventure, and I want people to be comfortable with the idea that, we may wander off, but we're never going to really get lost. We will always be able to find our way back. And I'll try to do it within a mile or two of what I told you we were going to ride.
Yeah, so he's, we've lived in the same area for 34 years, so you can imagine how many routes he's figured out in those many years. So anyway, so what tips would you give for people wanting to get started riding? Anyone?
I'll go. My advice is always the same. Just start. The beauty of bicycling is you can go out your front door and do it. So go out your front door and do it. You don't have to go to someplace special. You can ride in your neighborhood. And once you get comfortable riding in your neighborhood, then you can expand out of your neighborhood. And if you reach a point where it's like you feel uncomfortable, there are literally thousands of riders out there who've already traveled this path, and you can find help through one of our groups, through SEBA, through God knows how many different ways. Just reach out, but don't be afraid to start.
I'll go next. I agree with Damon. You just have to start, and I'll tell my own personal testimony. It's hilarious to me. I hadn't rode a bicycle in probably almost 27 years before I had started a few years ago. What I did, I said, well, I'm going to go to the gym and get my body together. I knew I was out of shape, work out real hard. And I did everything in the gym, rode a stationary bike. I lift all kind of weights, did my legs, or you name it. I did whatever was in that gym for like 4 months, 4 days a week. Well, one of my clients, and he also rides in the group, took me on my first bike ride. And I didn't even purchase the bike to do what I'm doing now. I purchased the bike to actually go downtown on a circle and casual ride, because I got a Nikon, and I take some pictures. That was it. That's what I bought the bike for. Nothing major. He took me on the first ride, and Stephanie, Damon, Connie, and Tiny, I think it's Tiny on here. Guess what? I thought I was gonna die.
Benny.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna die. I said all that working out I did for 4 months done me no good at all. I thought I was gonna die, and that's when I realized that cycling is a total different workout than a gym workout. Totally different. So my advice as well is to just get out there and start. Whether you ride a mile and come back, that's 2 miles. Just start somewhere, and eventually, you graduate up to more miles. We did 14 miles my first bike ride, and I went back the next day, even though I was sore. Thought I slept good that night. I went back the next day, and we did 19 miles. And after that, it's been a blur ever since then. I just been going up. So, so just start somewhere. And people ask me all the time, I want to start riding. What do I do? What kind of bike do I need? Well, I tell folks not to buy a mountain bike. But anyway, don't buy a mountain bike. Don't do that. But anyway, just start somewhere. Just start somewhere. And like you said, there are plenty of cyclist riders out here that I believe and know are willing to help you, assist you, and aid you in whichever way possible to get you going.
Connie,
That's
I will tell you that Lathaniel made the classic mistake. He thought just because you have gray hair and you don't look like an athlete, that you can't really ride a long time. And then a friend of ours named Benny showed up. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. The people who look like they can't ride a long while. And I always tell people, I love it because I'm the old lady that will pass you on a hill.
you did. You passed me several times yesterday.
But then I gotta rest at the top. But you know, I think it's funny because that's one of the things I think we've all discovered about biking is that it's a lifelong passion. And the idea that we have people who are out here biking in their 60s and their 70s. You know, Damon and I talk about it all the time. I have a friend that started biking when she was 60, you know, which I think is a testament, you know. And don't let the smooth taste fool you. You will be huffing and puffing, and she won't even be sweating, and will be ahead of you, wondering where are you? You know, she sees you in her rearview mirror. So, you know, that's a great thing too. It's to know that this is something you can do for as long as you want. But then we also have the pup that's a beast, my daughter, who who rides up at the front too. And, you know, she's been riding since she was a little kid. And my girls have been riding since they were little kids. So it's something I think you can do for your whole life, you know. So I think that's more than anything, that's the sales point to me, is that it doesn't matter what your physical shape is when you enter. Nope. It's still something you can do all your life.
Yeah.
I think there's another piece there too. I am a tour leader for adventure cycling. We do multi-day tours all over the country. And I always tell my tour groups on the first night before we started riding, like if there are 15 of us on this ride, that means there are 15 different adventures about to begin. The only way you can mess up is to get caught in somebody else's adventure. So ride the ride you came to ride. If you came to be the first one to the finish, that's probably the most difficult choice you've made, because there will be at least 3 others who want to be first also. But if you want to be the person who sees the most trees or counts the most cars or whatever, that's your adventure, and you've got to stick to your adventure. So riding isn't about who's the fastest, although we all look at, you know, Tour de France and how fast can you go. It's not about being the fastest. It's not about being the strongest. It's about, for me, having the most fun. And you have to define what that means for you. Like for me, I get no better thrill than to finish a ride and have somebody come to me and say, that's the farthest I've ever gone. Or there were things I saw that I've never seen before, even though I've lived here forever. Or my favorite is, when can we do it again? Because then you know they've had a good time.
Yep. Amen. You sure right about that. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been following the Bikes United in Indy Facebook page, and one of the things Lathaniel does is do some videos during the ride, you know, before and during the ride. And I think it really gives you an idea of the type of ride it is, and so that's a lot of fun. And Black Girls Do Bike Facebook page, a lot of them put up what their own personal rides, the ones that they've done, which is, you know, that's encouraging to others to, you know, I did 5 miles. That was my farthest ride today, or, you know, or I got 5 miles in today, you know, it's better than 0.
Right.
And, you know, hopefully also get more, you know, and as they get higher, like I got my, you know, my farthest I've ever ridden, I got 25 miles in, or I got 50 miles in, or whatever, you know. So, you know, I'm kind of a mileage junkie.
Yeah, you are.
I track every single mile that I ride.
I do too.
I have.
I do too.
I
track
have
every
a
mile.
log from 1987 of every single ride I've done. And last year, in the midst of the pandemic, I got more rides in and more miles in than I ever have before. didn't, it was my sanity. Basically getting on my bike every day was my sanity.
And you guys, I'm just the opposite of that. It's like I just get on my bike and ride. I don't care how fast I'm going or how many watts I'm producing or what my distance is or even time for that matter. Although unlike you guys who have this built-in GPS, I don't have that, but I do have sort of this built-in chronometer. I know it's like, oh, I'm about a half hour into this. If I want to be home an hour, I got to turn around and head back. But how far, I usually don't know. And for new riders, don't get caught up in all that. Don't worry about what your heart rate is or how many RPMs you're spinning or how many watts you're putting out or any of that. Just ride. And you will, I tell people that the nation of bike riders is divided into lots of tribes. And so first join the nation and then you'll figure out what tribe you want to be in as you go along.
Yeah.
Right.
We had one of my friends join us, the Major Taylor ride, not this past weekend, but 2 weeks ago. And it was a little more challenging. He hadn't been riding most of the season. So he was, wasn't feeling it. And so he turned around and he went back and I put his name and his wife's name out on my Facebook post because I was so happy to see them. I hadn't seen them in so long. And he said, well, 7 doesn't really qualify as a ride because I turned around at mile 10. I said, you still did more miles than the people on the couch.
That's right.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if it's a positive, as long as you're not doing negative mileage,
right.
and it's the beginning of something. And,
Right.
I, like we were talking about the lady that was, tackling those hills. I remember a time where she would have just turned around.
Right.
She would not have even, attacked, like, it would have been like, I'm over, I'm done. And, we just kept saying, you can do it, you can do it. And I can't tell you how many times they've done that to me when I wanted to turn around. So the idea is just to get out and get started. And even if you have a mountain bike, now it's going to be a lot of work and it's heavy. You'll get a workout and you can come out and ride. We'll probably convince you that you don't want that mountain bike at some point. But the good part is I tell people if it has 2 wheels, get out on it.
Right.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to ride a bicycle without a smile on your face.
Yeah. So what things would you tell other cycling groups to be more inclusive of all folks? If you could wave a magic wand, because each of you are within a group that basically is focused on encouraging, but that's not always the case with other cycling groups. And so what would you tell them is the secret sauce that you all have?
I'll tell you, it's an invite.
It's an
invite. The guy that got me cycling, everybody knows Chuck Oakenfuss because he's been cycling in Indianapolis forever. And we used to work together and he would bike on lunch. And I had a Goodwill bike. And he was like, bring that bike and ride with us. And that's how I'd been biking for years, but that's how I got started again because Chuck invited me. And he was patient enough to ride with me. And it was better than not doing exercise at lunch. So I think the secret weapon we all have in these groups is the mere idea that we give somebody a personal invitation to ride.
I think that is excellent idea. Because what I was going to say was the riders that are already in the group need to think about what would they have wanted when they started and provide that to the new rider. As I remember, I was 15 when I went to my first SEBA ride. And I remember being in the parking lot with my old raggedy Schwinn and all these other riders in their fancy outfits. And I was wearing, gym shorts and a t-shirt. And they just sort of chuckled at me. And they took off. And by the time we were half mile from the parking lot, I was out there huffing and puffing all by myself. And I thought, that's just not the way to invite somebody into an activity that you love. If you want them to embrace the love of cycling like you do, you've got to ease them into it, meet them where they are.
And what I to piggyback off what you just said, Damon, And what Stephanie said as well, the first thing I'm gonna say is invite, which is so true. Some of the people that are in the group, our group now, we actually met them on the bike trail last year. You know, we just sitting there talking and, you know, stuff like that. They were riding, but not really riding, you know, just kind of casually, you know, getting along. We actually met them on the bike trails last year. And from there, you know, we become friends. You know, they started coming along and riding more, went upgraded bikes, you know, all kind of stuff, you know. So the invite is Q. I mean, it's very important. I still invite personal friends now to this day. Some show and some don't. But one thing that you just said that I found to be near and dear to my heart is when somebody new comes along, whether I invite them or they just happen to show up. What I try to do now, and I didn't do when I first started cycling because I was new, you know, I drug my buddy on the trail for 20 miles and didn't blink. And he talked about me so bad because he got out of bed the next day. But I didn't know any better at that time. I was just so happy to be out there riding, smile like you said. But anyway, what I find myself doing now is I try to, the little coaching the little smarts that I have with cycling, I try to coach that person along, you know, hey, do this right here. You know, I'm gonna stick right here with you. Do this. Hey, your seat is a little too low. Hey, let's stop for a second and raise the seat just a little bit. Right. Legs, like, you know anything about gears? No, I know. I said, well, look here, put this gear right here. You know, now go down a low gear. I know I talked them through the whole process. I did that this morning. Right. I did it this morning, actually, to a guy this morning. I talked him through the entire process. And he was like, hey, you know what? This is much better. I didn't know anything about it, you know, so I do that. I find myself doing that now because like you said, you know, I want them to enjoy it and I want them to come back, you know, and then eventually you ride your 5 miles today, but, you know, in 3 weeks from now, you'll ride 15 miles in 3 weeks, you know, I want you to enjoy it and come back, you know, and have fun, you know, so I find myself every now and then doing that when I realize a person, this is really their first time actually riding like this, you know, because like I said, I want them to come back, you know, and fellowship with us, you know, again. So yeah, that's key.
Yeah. Yes, and cycling is full of teaching moments.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Stephanie talked about Chuck being the guy who got her going. For me, it was Steve Dayton. I remember the day I met Steve Dayton, I was like, how can you possibly go as fast as you go? And for those of you who don't know, Steve Dayton in the 70s was a national road champ. I mean, he was very, very serious cyclist. But Steve had no problem with, yeah, come on and ride with me. And he would ride at a level that challenged you, which certainly wasn't challenging him, and teach as you went along. And he just was like this never-ending soundtrack, you know. Turn your ankle a little bit this way, turn your hip a little bit this way, lean a little bit forward. It's just, but through repetition, I got better and better. I remember saying, Steve, I'm pedaling as fast as I can. How is it that people are going faster than me? And he would say, well, because you're not doing it right. And he would show me just one little thing. I was like, wow, now I'm faster than I used to be. Yeah. So it's really, really little stuff, but those opportunities come up.
He used to take me to church, Damon, because I used to pray. I still think when I rode him, I went to church because I prayed the whole time, Lord, don't let me die. Lord, don't let me die. But I remember the first time I rode over 20 miles an hour, it was, you know, because I was with him and he was unrelenting.
Yeah, incredible.
You know, and it was like, at the end, I knew I had been riding a bike.
But being a true champ, he never showed you all his tricks. And I remember we were riding one day, I was like, this is the day. I will not be dropped. And Steve, and there must have been 5 or 6 of us in this little pack, zooming along, and they charged up, and all of them except me hopped over this set of railroad tracks. And I just jammed on the brake. It's like, I can't do that. And they were gone. So I had to go out and figure out, how do you jump your bike over railroad tracks? Not something I recommend for beginners.
Right. Oh, yeah.
All right. So one of the things that, you know, I've been trying to figure out for the last 30 years is how to get more people of color bicycling. And I'm thrilled to see groups starting and groups doing that. But this has not been the case, as probably all of you know. And also at, at bicycling events. I think the night ride has been significantly more people of color, Black and brown people have joined in on the night ride, but that's the only bicycle event that I really can think of that has had, the hilly, not very much at all. And so there's more of an emphasis, but now, in the last 2 or 3 years, but, I recognized it 30 years ago when I was president of SEBA, and it's like, there's, 5 Black people and everybody knew who they were. And, I was, executive director of Indiana Bicycle Coalition, and I would ask some of my Black friends, okay, so how do I get more people, how do we get more Black people riding? And what I've found is Black people have always ridden, they're just not riding in the other groups. And so what I would like to do within BGI's efforts is to be as welcoming as possible to all cyclists, and kind of pick your brains as to how we can help that along with all of the other groups as well.
Well, I would say having this, Connie, is a step. Unfortunately, I mean, I hate to this unfortunately, but like me, Damon, and Lathaniel all ride with each other. So
Right.
I kind of know them.
We are.
Not true. Lathaniel and I have not ridden together.
Well,
No,
me, I
no.
ride with Lathaniel.
Yeah, so
But
you
we
ride with
will.
everybody.
We will.
So I'm the between. But
Yeah.
the idea that you're allowing us to come and talk about what we do allows other people to, to know we're out here. And I don't know that, well, and Starla is a friend of mine, so I'm going to call her out. I don't think there's anyone who's a Facebook friend of mine or a friend of mine that doesn't know that I'm a biking just nut. I don't know that anyone doesn't know that, but the idea that there are other groups out there, and I know my husband loves riding with Lathaniel and the fellas, because he's always the token, the token husband on the ride. So, the idea that he has a place to ride, he's just really enthused now. But the idea that you're allowing us to come and talk about our love for riding and to invite people, to come see this and to possibly come to our Facebook page or see us riding and know that they can stop us and ask a question, and next time they might ride with us. So I think this is a good step forward. And I admire your enthusiasm for trying to do it, because like I said, it's kind of organic. And I think a lot of us started riding more because of the pandemic, but everybody doesn't know we're out here. So I think that's great. And so thanks for having us today.
I was
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. And I was great to say it's funny this subject came up because when I first started a few years ago, I didn't see a whole lot of us riding bikes. But since the pandemic happened, I think we bought up all the bikes. You see us everywhere on the bike. I think we the ones bought the bikes up, because I see a lot of Black people riding bikes now, whether it's a casual ride or, or a speed ride or whatever the case. I see a lot of us riding bikes now. It's funny, we was out this morning on the trail, and that's all I saw this morning on the trail, was us riding bikes on the trail, So I think more of us are starting to ride bikes, but like she said, I just think they just don't ride in groups, for the most part.
That's it exactly. Minority riders tend to ride alone more than in groups.
Yep.
And I think some of that has to do with what we talked about earlier. They don't feel welcome when they join a group. And not just because they're novice riders and so they can't keep up or whatever, but because they feel isolated. They're not in on the jokes, they don't have the nomenclature and whatever. And so having groups like ours gives them an opportunity to come together in a place where they do feel comfortable. And I fully suspect that many of the folks who ride with us will then move on to ride in other things. It's like, we're talking about people going to rides all across the country. And I've had several people in the Major Taylor Club, as new as it is, talk about, we like to do a touring ride and go for multiple days. And what do we do there?
Yeah.
So I think that we have created across these groups a place where people can be comfortable when they start, which kind of goes back to your earlier question, Connie. What can groups do to increase diversity? Do what you can to make everybody comfortable when they start, and then let them choose their own path from there. You know, I know a woman who has a 5-mile loop, and that's all she will ever ride. She rides it over and over. Some days she rides 30 miles, but it's 6 of those 5-mile loops. And when I say, hey, come on, I can show you some other places to ride, she's like, nope, this is my ride. This is what I do. It keeps me fit, and I'm happy. And so there are going to be people who find this is all I do. But I think as we create more opportunities for folks to be comfortable in the early experiences, we'll start to see more Black riders who are in SEBA and who are doing adventure cycling tours and all of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other, you know, miss or underrepresented, of course, are women in general. And so, you know, a couple of years ago, I decided, okay, I'm going to count every woman bicyclist, and well, every bicyclist that I see and how many of them are women. And it was actually about 50-50. You know, and that was several years ago. And it was, but they were out, you know, in ones or twos, you know, they weren't out in groups. And I kind of think that might be the same for other underrepresented in group cycling. And so, you know, I'm thrilled that all three of you are fostering that, and whatever I and BGI can do to help continue fostering that. You know, we want to be part of the solution and part of the welcoming of all people for bicycling. So anyway, thank you all for joining. Is there any other final comments any of you would like to say?
I want to extend that personal invitation. If you're thinking about it, if you've got a bike and you want to ride, come on out and ride with us. And if you're uncomfortable joining the group to begin with, contact one of us. We will find a way to do a one-on-one ride with you and make you more comfortable, because we want to share this thing that we love with other people.
And I concur with Damon. Same sentiments.
Or maybe we're masochistic. I don't know. We want everybody to experience the pain with us. I don't know. So it could go either way. But the same thing here. And like I said, if you know me, I probably invited you to ride. I know I've invited Starla to ride. And even, you know, if you ask me, like right now, I have a neighbor that I'm going to work on the brakes on her bike. So even if you need bike maintenance, you know, we can hook you up with that too. You know, just minor stuff, we can help you with that. Most of us have changed the flat or do. My daughter's a beast, changed flats. I think she can do it with her eyes closed. But, you know, feel free to reach out. And I think, like Damon said, I'd like to nothing more than to share this love of biking with you.
Well, that is an awesome way to end. I got into bicycle advocacy 20 plus years ago because I wanted to share the love of bicycling with everyone else. And that is what still motivates me. And, you know, whatever I can do to help people do that, I'm all for it. And so thank you all for joining me. And like I said, I'll send you all the links so you have this and can share it with others as well. And thanks for joining.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Connie.
All right.